Once upon a time, this is an Italian folk tale. I heard first from Mary Hamilton, a storyteller, former teacher who lives in Louisville, Kentucky. Once upon a time, a beautiful young princess sat in the second-story window of the palace, combing her long, beautiful black hair. When a dove flew in through the open window, snatched up a barrette that she had intended to put in her hair in its beak, and flew out. The next day, she was sitting by the same window, combing her long, beautiful hair. The same dove flew in, picked up a scarf that she had intended to put on her hair, and flew out. The third day, the young princess sat in the same chair by the window, and the dove flew in, picked up the comb in its beak, and flew out. And the princess stood up and said, "That does it." And she came down the stairs, out of the palace, following the dove. Now the dove would look back, and it would fly away and stop, wait for her to catch up, and then fly and wait. Fly and wait. Fly and wait. And so it was that the dove led her deep into the forest, where she had never been before. And then it disappeared. But she walked on for a while until she came to a clearing, and across the clearing there was a miserable-looking hut with the windows open and the doors. And so she explored it. And as she started to go into the hut, out from the hut came the most handsome young man she had ever seen. And she said, "Excuse me, but I'm a princess. I live in the castle a way back. And for 3 days, a pesky dove has been stealing from me. And I just wonder, have you seen a dove?" And the young man smiled and said, "Yes, I know the dove. I am that dove. You see, I'm under a spell. I don't know what I did or why or how it came to be about. But I do know that you are the only one that can release me from the spell. I am the dove, and I'm the one that has been leading you to this place. And I know that the only way you can release me from this spell is to do exactly what I tell you." Well, the young princess said, "What do I have to do?" And the young man said, "You must sit in this chair by the window for 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day." I told you it was a fairy tale. And the princess agreed. So she took a place in the chair, and he said, "Now you must watch me when I turn into a dove and fly away. And keep your eye on exactly the place where I disappear. And do that for 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day. So she said, okay. And she sat there. And as she sat there, the sun and the wind and the rain beat upon her, and her skin became dry and cracked, and her hair became tangled, to the point where small animals would make their nest in her hair. And she sat there for 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day. And then the young man walked in the door, took a look at her, and saw how ugly she had become, and said, "You did all this for a man?" And he spit on her and walked out. She was heartbroken. She couldn't stand up. Gradually she was able to slip out of the chair, crawled herself out of the cabin, across the clearing, and cried herself to sleep. And when she woke up after a long, long time, there were 3 women standing there. And they said, "We know what happened. We know about the spell, and we know about the dove and the young man and what he did to you. But we're going to make it right." And so one of the women touched her hair, and it became long and beautiful, more beautiful than it had ever been before. The second woman touched her skin, and it became, rather than cracked, it became smooth and beautiful. And the third woman touched the rags that she was wearing, and all of a sudden she had more beautiful clothes than she had ever dreamed of. And immediately there was a palace, and the 3 women were her handmaidens. And as luck would have it, the palace that she was now in was directly across from the palace of the king. And you guessed it, the king was the young man that she had saved, who had become a prince and a king. Now, when the king woke up and realized that sometimes in the night a new palace had appeared, before he could do anything about it, he looked, and walking across the window of one of the palace was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. And he said, "I must have her." And he sent his servant to talk to see if they could meet. Now, the plot thickens, of course, and the 3 women, her handmaidens, said to the princess, "Tell him that you can meet, but he must build a platform from his balcony to your balcony and cover it with 2 inches of rose petals, and that you will walk across from your balcony to his and meet him. But he must not speak, and he must not set foot on the balcony." And so the word was communicated. The king agreed. He had his carpenters build the platform, cover it with 2 inches of rose petals. And the 3 women said to the princess, "Now here's how it works. You get about a third of the way across, and you pretend to step on a thorn, and you fall down and faint, and we'll do the rest." And so it went. And as the princess started, the king waited patiently, did not set foot on the platform, did not speak. The princess got about a third of the way across, said, "Oh, I stepped on a thorn. You're trying to poison me." Fainted, pretended. The three women came out, glaring at the young king as they pulled her back in. Well, he was beside himself. And as he looked from his castle to hers, he saw people coming and going. He saw doctors, and at one point he saw a priest, and he kept, "What's going on? What's going on?" And finally the word was that she's going to be okay, but her leg has swollen to 40 times what its usual size is. And he waited. Weeks later, the word was that no, she's going to be okay. Everything will be fine. So once again, he made an effort. He sent his servant to see if they could meet. This time the word was that if he tear down the old platform, build a new one, cover it with 3 inches of jasmine petals, and keep off the platform, don't say anything, the princess would walk out and meet him. This time, the 3 women said, "You know how it works. This time get about halfway across before you fall down, and we'll do the rest." So the day came. Young king was excited, but he waited patiently. The princess walked across the platform, got about halfway, fell down, and said, "I know you're trying to kill me." The women came out, got her, took her back in. This time the word was that she was going to die. And we waited patiently. And then the word came that no, she was going to live. So he said, "I have to try again." So this time he sent word, "What can I do for us to meet?" And the word came back to him. The princess said, "The only time she'll see you again is when you're in your coffin." King said, "I can do that." So he had his carpenters make him a coffin, fancy coffin, with the lid off, of course. And he lay down in the coffin, and he had his people carry him through the city. Come and see the king in his coffin. And he had them carry him by the palace where the princess lived. And she came out of the palace, walked up to the coffin, looked down at him, and she said, "You did all this for a woman?" And she spit on it. When she said that, the young king saw that she was the woman that had sat in the cabin, relieved him of the spell, and that he had spit on. He crawled out of his coffin, came over to her and said, "First, will you ever forgive me for the way I treated you?" and second. Can we start over again? And she did, and they did. And the story goes on. Now, when Mary Hamilton tells that story, she says, I tell it because I'm never quite sure what it means. But I think you'll agree that there's some power in the message that this story brings. I hope you enjoy it. I like to tell it. Thank you.